Hong Kong just will become another province in China. Any new ideas or new voice will be crushed.
There needs to be the first, second, third and fourth other Lewis Hamiltons coming up. There's so many different opportunities. If they're not told about this, they don't know how to get into it.
It was a fantastic experience and we loved every day. Every day was a different adventure, meeting so many people around the world. It was brilliant.
Being able to turn to music in times like these is so important. We're all just finding our way, like all of us, and we're all feeling for our fellow humans around the world and just hoping to try to stay safe and do the best job we all can.
Well, since the coronavirus pandemic began, artist Weiwei has launched himself into creative and humanitarian projects. In June, he raised over £1 million selling face coverings he designed to help support the work of global charities fighting coronavirus. And now he's unveiled his latest work at the Imperial War Museum. History of Bombs is a display of 50 life-size bombs that replicate those used in conflicts and wars over the last 100 years. And Ai Weiwei joins me now from Berlin. Firstly, why did you decide to get involved with the Imperial War Museum?
I think it's a very good location, and for many reasons, it focuses on the military practice of the history. And there's so much to be learned, and also so many things need to be aware of. You do think people need to be aware, and those things have to be physically almost like touchable, or you stand on it, you know. And those are real size bombs, and you only hear it from news, but to at this kind of close range, and it means very different.
Interesting to get your thoughts about the situation currently in Hong Kong. We've seen the arrests of pro-democracy activists. We've also seen the disqualification of people from the legislative election process. I mean, what do you make of the crackdown that we are seeing in Hong Kong, China using this national security law?
I think that is the surviving game Chinese government is playing, but to put it in Hong Kong with such a heavy-handed law, I think many people were facing to be either in jail or exiled or to be silenced.
How bad could it get for people in Hong Kong? And also, what does that mean for the relationship between China and the West?
I think Hong Kong just will become another province in China. That means any freedom of speech or human rights condition will be very heavily restricted under Chinese law. So any new ideas or new voice will be crushed.
Formula One is organising an anti-racism protest before Sunday's British Grand Prix. The organisation was criticised for its response to the Black Lives Matter protests. Some drivers have taken a knee in solidarity with the protests before the races, held since the return of the season. Lewis Hamilton, the first and only black Formula One driver, said there was a lack of leadership on racism and that the issue had, quote, gone off the agenda. Well, I'm joined now by Carol Glenn, the first black woman to become a race official in motorsport in the UK. Thanks very much for being with us, Carol. You've carved out a career in the sport, but I see you've written recently or said recently that you know, the sport is embedded with racism, or racism is embedded in motorsport.
Absolutely, definitely. I mean, I've been in it 32 years now, and along the way, I've had my issues or experiences of racism happened to me, directly to me. So it is definitely there, and this is at grassroots level, even at Formula One level.
And what form, Carol, has that racism taken that you've experienced?
It's been utilising what people call banter, you know, saying things to me, making out that I'm a gangster, say things like, you know, watch out, she might pinch your tyres or pinch your stereo, try talking in a Jamaican accent, which I don't have.
How can you get more black drivers, more black engineers, more black officials in motorsport?
Well, it's like, again, letting people know what opportunities there are for them. I've actually just started up trying to start an academy now. I've got about 13 youngsters who are in karting, and they've all hit the barriers of trying to move on, and I'm now trying to push them on now, and I'm hoping that we can also tap into the initiative that Lewis has launched with the Royal Academy of Engineers. And also, I'm quite happy to go out to schools and try to explain to some of these children in schools, boys and girls, that they can get into, engineering, designing, being a driver. There's so many different opportunities, but if they're not told about this, they don't know how to get into it.
Right. So just 10 seconds left. I mean, do you think this could be a moment that could promote change that you want to see?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and that there needs to be the first, second, third, and fourth other Lewis Hamiltons coming up.
Well, this week the government turned its attention to tackling obesity with plans to curb junk food advertising and promotional deals. The celebrity chef Jamie Oliver is a prominent campaigner in the fight against obesity and told me the new strategy was surprising but welcome.
We've been working in this area for the last 5 years, since chapter 1 of the childhood obesity strategy. And I think what we have now is a nice platform to really get on with business and really start doing all the things that matter in supporting our most vulnerable communities. So, yeah, this is about every child. And of course, it goes from the schools to the high street. And a lot of these initiatives have been driven by the public.
There's obviously a correlation between being morbidly obese and being more susceptible to the serious parts of having COVID, and that seems to be perhaps the launch pad for this initiative.
Yeah, look, I think often in history, awful things and crises allow you to sort of take stock and maybe refocus on some stuff that they always knew about. Like I say, this strategy has been going on for 5 years, and it's taken Boris to sort of pull it off the shelf and get it back into working order. It's the beginning, and he says that in his release. But yeah, I think it's undoubtedly COVID-19 has amplified the emotions, it's amplified the science, and it's amplified the need to make sure that our British children, for all the reasons, are as fit as possible and ready to be as productive as possible. Just to give you kind of clarity into why do we care and why is it utterly important to everyone in this country, no matter where they come from. If you're a kid and you're from a poor background, you're over twice as likely to be overweight or obese. We know that that tracks into teenage years and early adulthood. We know that that has correlation with low educational attainment. We know it means that on average you get paid less, you have more days absenteeism, cost the state more, and end up dying slightly younger than your well-off counterpart. So there is a kind of an inequality story here, evening the playing fields, and really about making sure that we're putting as much support where it's needed.
You've got quite a brood, haven't you? I'm always curious as to how people with lots of children, how they coped during lockdown. How did you find it?
Oh, look, I think from teenagers that just wanted to be out with their friends to a little 3-year-old that wanted to climb up everything and paint everything. It was colourful, to say the least. And I think, like a lot of families, the first 6 weeks were quite trying. I found myself unexpectedly doing not a live TV show, but pretty much within 16 hours every day, we were filming a cooking show that was very much sort of COVID lockdown based, about swap-ins and things you can do and how you can be creative with basic ingredients. So that was never expected, but it kind of kept me busy for a month. But I also got some real quality time with my kids and my wife, and of course I'm grateful for that. But what a time.
Now, to a remarkable achievement that it's fair to say takes two. More than 18,000 miles covered, 25 countries crossed, and the world's fastest tandem couple are still in the same social bubble. Kat Dixon and Raz Marsden have pedalled their way into the world record books, circumnavigating the globe on a tandem in the fastest time ever. And I'm pleased to say that they both join us now. 80 to 100 miles a day for more than 250 days. What on earth possessed you?
It's hard to know when you say it like that, actually.
Let's just talk about the record, though, because this is not just you breaking the women's tandem record. This is you breaking the overall record. The men did it in 281 days. You did it in a little over 263. How on earth did you stuff the men so much?
Well, I just think we kept going and we didn't have many days off, really. No. So we cycled sort of across America, didn't we, with one day off, and then India, one day off. Personal highlights from you both?
It's hard to kind of pick one, but I think the Big Sur for me, cycling down the coast, was extraordinary. Beautiful sunsets and sunrise in the morning, absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, no, I think for me, I love Myanmar. So we just left India, and India was brilliant, but really frenetic. And the people there were just so courteous and kind, and we could drink tea, and it was just lovely. But there were so many highlights. I think there was a highlight in every country that we went through.
How on earth did you stay friends over the course of 260 odd days, travelling around the world with huge physical effort as well?
I had its moments, but actually, when we were across, it was very rarely with each other. We had hunger. If we were very hungry, that was the biggest problem. But I don't think we were ever cross with each other particularly.
No, I think we're good friends, and I think it's about teamwork, and it's about understanding each other and trying to sort of look after each other a bit as well, because there was times when it was really, really hard, and it was just a question of looking out for each other and making sure we'd eaten and drank and all of those things, which were, some of the things that made it much more sort of challenging, I think, particularly when it was difficult to get food and things in various countries. So, yeah, but we're still friends.
A new study has found companies with more female executives perform better. It suggests that listed firms where at least 1/3 of the bosses are women have a profit margin more than 10 times greater than those without. The research also found that 15% of companies in the FTSE 350 have no female executives at all. Financier and campaigner Dame Helena Morrissey joins me now. It's very interesting, this, isn't it? It's often been said that women are good at business and good for business. Now you seem to have the research and the numbers to prove it.
Yeah, in fact, it's not new news, really. I mean, these numbers are really stark. But actually, there are reports going back over a decade that suggest that if you have a mixed gender team, I mean, that's the key here. It's not that women are so much better. It's just that the balance between men and women can really make a big impact on a company's bottom line. OK,
so is it men not appointing women to key positions? Is it women not applying for the key positions? What are the issues that you're finding?
So I think it's a bit of both, because obviously you have to look further back to the women in executive roles. You have to look back at the whole career pipeline, as it's often called. Not a very pleasant expression, I'm afraid. But there are often women joining all the professions, all the careers are very well represented these days at the entry level. More graduates are women these days than men in countries like the UK. So it's the promotion that isn't happening. And many women stay in the workforce, but they end up, partly because often we have families, and the policies just aren't sort of female friendly around, or family friendly at that point in women's lives. But I do fundamentally think it comes down to this, that women are encouraged to behave like men, to adopt male trappings of power, to succeed. And I think these results that are released by this report show actually when women can be women, when there's more than 1/3 of us in the boardroom or in the leadership team, then we can make a big difference to a company, but not if we just the token and if we are just, they're left isolated in a male-dominated environment.
I mean, your story is, a successful one. So women running things and hugely successful businesses, what are the qualities that they bring that perhaps men don't, do you think?
I'm going to have to be careful not to make myself hugely unpopular with all your male viewers here, but I do think on average there are subtle differences, and I think women do tend to be more collaborative, like to sort of regard themselves more like first among equals rather than the big sort of command and control boss. and do tend to build a consensus. And in a world where we have such complex problems, where nobody knows the answers, I think that's more important than ever before. I think we need more of that style of leadership as we go out of the coronavirus crisis and as we rebuild the economy. So, you know, these results that we've seen may be just the start.
In November, of course, Americans will cast their vote in the presidential election, electing either Joe Biden or re-electing Donald Trump as president. Well, since Mr. Trump took the seat in the Oval Office, he's been a favourite subject, of course, of many comedians and satirists, including my next guest. Harry Shearer is a musician, director and voice of numerous characters from The Simpsons, including Mr. Burns, Smithers and Ned Flanders, and an album named The Many Moods of Donald Trump is his work as well. Very good to talk to you, Harry. Now, well, tell us about The Many Moods of Donald Trump. Very true, of course. What is it? And I've seen a song you've done on YouTube.
Yes. Well, when I say The Many Moods of Donald Trump, as a slight misnomer, because I think there's only one, aggressive defensiveness. But the song Son-in-Law is the first song from the collection to be released. It's a tribute to Jared Kushner, who is his chief counselor about apparently everything, the man whose portfolio expands to the very limits of his incompetence. And this is all the songs on this collection, with one exception, I perform in the voice of Donald Trump.
Well, let's give our audience a little taste of it. I mean, it is very weird. Well, shall I say eerie? Let's have a look.
Person I trust most, son-in-law. Son-in-law. He's the butter on my toast, son-in-law.
Spooky there. You never know, the president might like it and adopt it as part of his campaign music. Who knows? But listen, let's talk about the politics now. And at the moment, a lot of people, you know, on the non-Trump side seem to be writing him off. The polling's bad. But, you know, this time 4 years ago, you could almost have said the same thing. It would be wrong, I suspect, in your view, to write off the president's chances.
Re-election campaigns for incumbents for president in America always end up being referendums or referenda on the performance of the incumbent. And when you've got a pandemic that's out of control and derided and denounced by scientists outside the country as incompetent, and the results are becoming even more known to every American who knows somebody or has somebody in their family who's fallen victim to this disease. It's a lot harder to brag about your performance as an incumbent.
I've got to ask you about The Simpsons, and in particular, the character that I, of course, have modelled my career on, learnt an awful lot from in the last 30 years, Kent Brockman. Do you think he'd approve? I know you can't see me. Do you think he'd approve of what I've turned into?
I can see you, as a matter of fact. The technology is available to us here in the control room at Channel 6, and I'm liking your suitings.
Now, you might just recognise my next guest as once a resident of Ramsay Street. Since she played Nina Tucker all those years ago in the Australian soap Neighbours, Delta Goodrem has pursued a triumphant career as a singer and songwriter. And she's just released a new single called Paralysed. Let's take a listen.
We need some time to heal, and it may take a year. Reset the clocks.
Pleased to say that Delta joins us now. Delta, lovely to see you this morning. I have to say, I've been besieged all morning by Delta Goodrem fans saying you've got to get back to the United Kingdom sometime soon. I suspect that might be a little bit in the distance, but at least lockdown has lifted where you are. I mean, how has it been for you?
I mean, definitely. Well, I'm sending all my love to all my friends and supporters out there in the UK, and the second I can get there, I will be there in a heartbeat. Well, basically, I mean, even in our states, everywhere is a little bit different right now. Victoria's gone into a heavier lockdown than New South Wales, but we're all just finding our way, like all of us, and we're all feeling for our fellow humans around the world and just hoping to try to stay safe and do the best job we all can.
How on earth does one make music in lockdown that isn't incredibly sad, incredibly poignant, you know, incredibly pessimistic? How do you manage to get a major chord in there?
It's a great question. I had written a lot of songs before going into lockdown, so I didn't know that my next chapter I'd be back at the piano isolating with so much time. But as fate would have it, there was more stories to tell. But even just being able to turn to music in times like these is so important, to be able to, you know, be able to escape into some feelings and to be able to connect on that level of sound when you're expressing something on the outside of what you're feeling on the inside is so important. But I always turn to music.
So tell us a little bit then about the album and indeed about the single, Paralysed. We were just hearing it a second there. I mean, have you been able to kind of inject those uplifting vocals which are known?
Of course, of course. I mean, I think I've been able, in this next album, I really started to tell stories I'd never told before. And whilst in lockdown, of course, I started to do these live shows from my living room and be able to do any songs that people requested, take the wall down, invite people into the living room. But being able to find empowering messages in songs is so important to me. It always has been from the day that I started.
Best of luck with the good new single and the album. And yeah, for all the fans, they do say you've got to get back here as soon as you can.
Thank you so much, Neil. Sending much love and light.
Stop it.